Morning. Welcome to another edition of Curtis Jones Writing. I have finished three of my books. I've got one sitting here. Let's see. Here we go. Uh, the first book I did was uh, Dad's Old Truck Volume 1 and Dad's Old Truck Volume 2. Then I did the book called Imagination. Get these over in the right order so I don't mess them up. Now then I did the fourth book was uh, Love Endures All Things, a love story from teenage marriage to senior years. Uh, I have 14 books written, and I'm working my way through each chapter of every book until I've posted everything that I've written. Uh, the Love Endures All Things comes in a trilogy of books. The one I just showed you, Love Endures All Things Across the Creek, and Love Endures All Things the Deep South. I will do those books, and I'm starting this one today. And the next book after Love Endures All Things trilogy will be Getting There. It has some stories from my life. It has stories that were passed down from my ancestors, and I wanted to do that one. So uh, the first one we're going to do out of Love Endures All Things Across the Creek. And as we go through the book, you'll understand why it's called Across the Creek. Uh, if you like what I'm doing, you can go to my web page, which is curtis-jones-books.squarespace.com, and you can find a link there. You can find definitions or explanations of what's in each book that I've written, and you can also find a link to take you to Amazon so you can order either the ebook format or paperback format. And some of them I've been working on getting them in hardback, in case you, because the people that have been reading them really do like them. And I was asked if it'd be possible to get a hardback of that so they could keep it and pass it down. So I've been working on that. Also, my Curtis Jones author page on Facebook, and it has links to Amazon as well. Both of these sites have links to the Montgomery Public Library, where I used to present. I used to present seminars on the book that I wrote, uh, called How to Publish Yourself, and the subtitle is All About Control. And you'll see that as we go through that. Uh, and that'll be after the Getting There book. So I'm going to start off by reading the dedication in this book. It says, I wish to dedicate these stories to my late wife, Miss Stephanie Georgina Minzak Jones. She is the reason I struggled to do what was right almost always. I say almost because I'm not perfect. However, Stephanie was as near perfect as a woman could have been for her husband. Without her, we would not have fared so well. We owe much of the success we had at carving out a homestead to her perseverance and sheer willpower. She was the driving force behind the beauty and comfort of the home we built in the wilderness near the national forest. It backed up to our property. This is a tale of human ingenuity when two minds work as one. And it ends with, thank you, Miss Stephanie. Chapter 1, Love at First Sight, is where I'll start off. It says, I lived, uh, or I never lived until I found Miss Stephanie, my wife, Stephanie. She and I had been married almost 25 years when we first lived in a little place called Nicut, Oklahoma. And there'll be a chapter of Nicut in the next book I do. Nicut was the remains of a community once called Ryansville, which thrived and was located 30 miles northwest of Fort Smith, Arkansas. Ryansville was on a stagecoach route that ran from Fort Smith, Arkansas to Tahlequah, Oklahoma. That is where the Cherokee Nation capital sat in the late 1800s. It is still there today. That is okay. Soon other roads were built and the stage route changed, and the town all but dried up. Most people left, and the main population became those of the Cherokee Nation. The native Indians never called the community Ryansville, but instead called it Nicut because it was a shortcut from Fort Smith, Arkansas to the Cherokee Nation. At least the Cherokee Nation's seat of authority in Tahlequah, Oklahoma. Most people soon forgot the name Ryanville, and only the oldest folks passed down the story of the town of Nicut's beginnings. I saw an advertisement in a local newspaper for a 15-acre piece of land for only $5,000 with terms available, the ad said. That meant we could make payments on the place. We didn't have $5,000 to buy anything at that time. We contacted the agent and asked to see the place. We lived in Fort Smith and met the agent in Roland, Oklahoma, for the drive up to the property. The agent told us all about the place as we made the 20-mile drive to its location. We had lived in town for some time, and the intrusions were becoming difficult to deal with. Just before we inquired about the place, the police ran through our yard chasing a suspect and ordered us to stay inside. We'd had enough. The agent drove for what seemed like an hour to cover the 20 plus miles to the site. Stephanie and I were beginning to worry that something strange, or some strange man, may have tricked us into going into the wilderness with him. About 55 minutes into the drive, the agent turned off of the pavement and drove down what seemed a well-traveled dirt road. We went about a mile down the dirt road when we came alongside a wonderful-looking creek. It ran alongside the road for a couple hundred yards. It had a gravel bottom, and its waters were as clear as glass. We could even see fish in the water from the car. The road looked as though it ended as it came to a steep hill that lay against the creek. The bank was about 15 feet tall from the water level. The road made a sharp right turn and went down to the creek. There was a nice, smooth concrete slab that crossed the creek, and the creek ran in a straight line for perhaps half a mile in either direction from this point. The agent stopped on the slab for a minute or two to let us look around. We were taken with the view from the slab. The He then proceeded to drive up the other side of the creek and turned left onto a drive that went only 100 feet or so. It turned into a large open field. It was a hay field and had already been mowed and baled, and the hay had been hauled away. The field was level and smooth and maybe 50 acres in size. The fresh mowed field looked like a park from the car. There were deer on the other side of the field that ran away as soon as they saw us. We drove catty corner to the opposite side of the field where the small driveway went into the trees. Excuse me. The drive was less used and a little rough for the car we were in. The road then went up a small incline that was cut into the hill that would raise us about 30 foot from the field's level. There was a small clearing about 60 foot square at the top. The agent stopped the car and we got out. We must have spent a good hour or two walking around the property. It was 15 acres and had about 2,000 foot of creek frontage on this place. There was peace and quiet out there that the city could never offer. I'm sorry. We were about a mile from the nearest neighbor's house. Stephen and I bought the plot of land that ran along that beautiful creek. When we came to look at the land in July, the creek was flowing nicely, and the concrete slab, commonly called a low water bridge, was easy to cross. It was covered by about 2 inches of water. It was a lovely scene, and we were sure we would buy this place because it was love at first sight. The place had trees that were nearly 100 years old, 3 foot across at the base, and tall and straight. Most of the trees were over 100 feet tall. The original driveway was over 120 years old and had been the stage line around stage line from Fort Smith to Stillwell, which was the town between there and Talclaw. The old stage road was grown up, and you could not drive it anymore. You could, however, see where it had been, and I was sure that I could fix that with a chainsaw and a shovel. The night after we looked at the place, we talked into the wee hours of the morning about how we could live there forever. Stephanie and I had been gathering supplies to use in building a house. We planned to do this 3 years before we found the place and had been storing away small items that were required when building a house. Pardon me, I got a tickle in my throat this morning. We had 4 children and knew we could not afford a house in town, and we also wanted to live in the country. This place seemed ready made for us. We closed the deal the next day with and agreed to pay $75 a month until it was paid for in about 5 years. We planned to buy material as we went along and finish the house by the time the land was paid for. We went out to show the place to friends and family several times that summer. We built a large lean-to shed. That means it was open on one end and the other three sides were closed in. Lean-to shed to store supplies for building. As the summer rolled along, we were quite satisfied that we had done the right thing. Labor Day weekend came, and we had 3 inches of rain in town that week before Labor Day. We loaded up the trailer with the supplies we'd gathered. We started to the place for the weekend camping trip to work on the house. When we turned into the dirt road, the sound of running water filled the air. We didn't think much about it because we had never had to deal with flooding problems before. When we reached the position or the portion of the road where we could see the creek, we were shocked to see the water up almost to the road. We drove on down to the corner where the road went to the low water bridge. We could see nothing but rolling torrents of angry waves. There were a couple of men on the other side, on the bank, with four-wheelers peering back at us. They yelled something, but we could not hear them over the sound of the water. We sat there with our loaded trailer and realized why we got such a good deal on the land. We waited for a good hour and wanted to see if the creek was going down any. It remained the same. We were able to turn around with the trailer because the spot had a school bus turnaround that the county had prepared, and it was the end of the line for the school bus. We drove back to the little store, which was about a half a mile down the pavement, and went into the place to introduce ourselves and ask questions about the creek. The owner of the store was Jim Mathis. He had bought that place and built a small country store when he had retired from the Air Force. Jim turned out to be a dear friend to our whole family. It seemed that the creek came up on a regular basis, and that is why so few people lived across the low water bridge. Jim said that there are months at a time when it was impossible to drive across the creek. He told us that there was another way onto the property if we wanted to try it. The way went over the mountain that was just behind our place. We would have to go back down the road until we came to the corner or the county road that had a big metal bridge that crossed over Little Lee's Creek, which was, by the way, the name of the creek. We would then drive on that road until we came to the next big metal bridge that allowed Big Lee's Creek to cross underneath the bridge and the road. He said that was about 5 miles. We should then turn on the road that went alongside Lee's Creek and go another 5 miles up the mountain. Jim said go up the mountain until we come to the only road that turned off the main dirt road that we would be traveling on. The less used road would go to the north and down into a valley. He said we should follow this road for another 5 miles, always veering to the left at any Y or T in the road. When we came to the creek, we would know where we were. We would know that we were there. He warned us that the road was in bad shape and could be washed out in places. We took our loaded trailer home to Fort Smith and covered it until and wait until we could get across the creek. This would take several weeks from then. It seemed to take forever to find the creek low enough for us to be able to get the loaded trailer back to our place in the wilderness. We were proud of the place, so we endured the wait until we were able to carry all of the supplies out for the build. I had to keep reminding myself that anything worth having is worth waiting for. At least that is what my grandpa always said. However, when you are young and in a hurry, time can creep by so slowly. That's the end of this chapter, an introduction to living off grid, I guess you might say, because that's what happened. So, the next chapter, I'm going to talk about the way or the back way into the property. It's an interesting story, but everything Stephanie and I experienced in life were a little off center from what everybody else experienced. And that's what makes these stories so interesting. So many people enjoy them and like them. We were kind of like pioneers in the way things worked for us. I hope you enjoyed this. If you get in a hurry to hear the next chapter or the next story or the next book, you can go to my webpage and find the link to Amazon so that you can order it. If you do like these stories that I'm reading on the internet here on YouTube, you can hit the like button, and I hope you do because that is part of what helps me stay up here on YouTube. And you can hit the subscribe button so you'll be notified every time I post something. Hit that little bell up there too. I think it's a bubble that way on my computer. Hit that little bell and it'll let you know when something's posted. Uh, and if you enjoyed this and you know someone you think might enjoy it, share this with them. Tell them about your likes and dislikes of it. That would be wonderful. And you could also uh, message me. I look at that once or twice a week out of when I get a chance to go, and I try to answer every post that's made. And I will say goodbye for now. God bless you. Keep yourselves safe until the next time. Goodbye.